Commander Naren gazed through the fractured viewport of the Vidian High Command Center, questioning yet again if transmitting that cursed distress call had been an utter squandering of the scarce remaining energy. His antennae slumped forlornly as another far-off detonation shook the facility, causing fine metallic particles to shower down from the ceiling. Excellent, precisely what his already soiled attire required, additional dirt. "Report status," he snapped, though the tremor in his tone revealed the dread he was striving frantically to conceal. Lieutenant Farah Blaz, a normally unflappable centurion with skin the color of twilight, worked urgently at her console. "It's bad, Commander. Another trio of settlement domes are offline in the southern quadrant. Droxian landing craft are touching down in sectors 7 through 13. Casualty figures are... well, they're arriving more rapidly than our systems can handle." "Marvelous," Naren muttered, sarcasm heavily coating his words from his mandibles. "And our world's defense network operating at only 17% effectiveness? Those Droxian pulse weapons are precisely tuned to interfere with our shield frequencies," Blaz added. "It's as if... haha, they possessed exact knowledge of our operational frequencies." Her chuckle held no mirth. It was that unique sort of laughter that arises when circumstances are so catastrophically dire that the mind malfunctions and deems laughter the fitting reaction. Naren struck the tactical display with his three-fingered hand. "Because we were betrayed. When I identify the Council species responsible for leaking our defensive plans, I will personally deliver them to a Jovian acid slug, piece by piece, slowly." The entire command center grew still at his outburst. 26 pairs of eyes representing 7 different species deliberately avoided eye contact with their leader. He couldn't fault them. The Vidian Alliance, formerly esteemed guardians of peace in the Orion Spur, now reduced to huddling in their final operational command hub, while the Droxian Empire systematically wiped out their culture. "Communications!" Naren called out, attempting a tone of authority despite everything. "Any replies to our plea for help?" Communications Officer Plick Rendar, a diminutive furry prion with nervously fluttering ears, shook his head with such force his translator pendant struck his chest repeatedly. "Zero response from the Galactic Concord. The Elian Federation expresses deep concern regarding the situation, yet apparently not enough concern to dispatch even one vessel. The Uzi Confederacy asserts their battle fleet is undergoing scheduled servicing, all 11,000 ships concurrently. What an astonishing coincidence." He raised his paws skyward in frustration. Everyone is too terrified of the Droxians to intervene. "What about, you know," Lieutenant Blaz lowered her voice, casting nervous glances around. "The humans? The humans?" The command center filled with agitated chittering and clicking noises, the Vidian expression of derision. Admiral Vox Palar, who had remained a silent observer in the corner until this moment, finally spoke, his voice possessing the gravelly resonance of one who had witnessed excessive conflict across numerous star systems. "You propose involving those savages in this? You're aware of the legends. Their purported Reaper fleet once pulverized an entire moon because its admiral's hat was insulted. And their method of negotiation includes bringing absurdly large armaments to diplomatic discussions." Naren shut his eyes, sensing the burden of leadership weighing on him more heavily. "The crisis begins than the Droxian shelling ever could. We dispatch the signal to every allied and neutral system within range, Earth included. But let's be practical. Nobody is en route. Particularly not the humans. They've ignored all interstellar communications for more than 3 solar cycles." As if to emphasize his bleak outlook, another blast, significantly nearer this time, rattled the command center, making several consoles emit sparks violently. "Well," Naren sighed, unsheathing his ceremonial dagger. "I always envisioned my final defense being more stately, but I suppose facing annihilation by the galaxy's most brutal empire while coated in sealing debris will suffice. At least the humans aren't present to witness our downfall. They'd likely just find it amusing and vend admission tickets." Little did he realize the extent of his error. Ambassador Krell's skepticism. Ambassador Lorik Krell straightened his ceremonial neckband for the 14th occasion in as many minutes. The Droxian bombardment had ceased for the moment, undoubtedly creating an unsettling quiet that felt more ominous than the blasts themselves. He traversed the length of the emergency shelter, his scaled feet producing an irritatingly precise clicking sound on the metal decking. "Would you kindly cease that infernal pacing?" Admiral Vox grumbled, not lifting his gaze from the holographic combat charts. "Some among us are attempting to ascertain precisely the extent of our hopeless situation." Krell scoffed, his nostril openings flaring markedly. "Oh, I can inform you exactly how hopeless we are without recourse to all those complex estimations. We are, employing the official diplomatic phrasing, thoroughly and unequivocally doomed." "Your positivity is truly inspiring," Commander Naren mumbled, massaging his temples. "Remind me again why the ambassador was brought to our last operational command hub?" "Because," Krell retorted, pulling himself up to his full, rather modest stature, "when the Droxians inevitably breach these defenses, which they shall, likely within the forthcoming 12 hours, someone must conduct the negotiation of our surrender with a semblance of decorum." Lieutenant Blaz let out a harsh laugh that bore a striking resemblance to a sob. "Decorum? The Droxians don't entertain surrenders. They collect mementos. Skulls are preferred." "Which explains my meticulous focus on my neckband," Krell answered with an exaggerated sigh. "If my cranium is fated to adorn some Droxian general's display, I desire it to appear respectable. Initial impressions are important, even post-mortem." Communications Officer Plick abruptly sat bolt upright, his furry ears twitching intensely. "Hold on, I'm detecting something via the long-distance sensors. Multiple contacts entering the system. That speed reading can't be accurate." "What is it?" Naren demanded, rushing toward him. "These velocity indicators, they're unbelievable. Nothing travels that quickly. Not even Droxian battleships." Ambassador Krell scoffed once more, the noise akin to a slowly deflating bladder. "Don't raise your hopes. It's likely merely sensor anomalies. Or perhaps the welcome relief of oblivion playing games with our desperate imaginations." "No, these are definitely vessels," Plick maintained, his paws flitting over the console. "A significant number of vessels, and they are transmitting on—" "Oh dear." "What now?" Admiral Vox insisted. "They are broadcasting using human frequencies." The chamber descended into such profound silence that one might have heard a nanobiotic dust mite sneeze. "Humans?" Krell finally stammered, his scales adopting a sickly yellowish tint. "Failed calls for help." "Impossible! Those unhinged primates never acknowledged our distress signal." "Evidently they did," Plick countered, adjusting his translator. "And based on these telemetry readings, they will arrive in roughly 7 minutes." Krell sank theatrically into the closest seat, which emitted a groan of complaint. "Splendid! Absolutely splendid! We evade destruction by the Droxian menace only to be delivered by humans? Are you people aware of their actions during the Proxima conflict? Their concept of a peace accord included 18 distinct articles concerning appropriate barbecue methods." "I believed that was merely fabricated propaganda," Lieutenant Blaz murmured. "It was not," Krell hissed. "I was present, as a junior attaché. Their Admiral Burke declared that correct meat-smoking procedures were essential, non-negotiable elements for civilized interaction. They cooked deceased creatures over open flames for amusement. What sort of species engages in such behavior?" "The sort possessing the most formidable weaponry in the sector," Admiral Vox observed dryly. "Frankly, at this juncture, I'd greet Jovian slime devils if they arrived with sufficient firepower." "You fail to comprehend," Krell lamented, burying his face in his hands. "If the humans are inbound, it signifies only one possibility. They are dispatching them asterisk. "Asterisk them asterisk?" Naren inquired, antennae twitching with anxiety. "The Reaper fleet," Krell whispered, as though uttering the name too loudly might hasten their arrival. "The surprise arrival of Earth's infamous Reaper fleet." The command center's primary view screen flickered into activity simultaneously as the proximity alert started blaring with increased intensity. The picture stabilized, showing the immense void of space, and then, akin to specters emerging from the emptiness itself, They materialized. Ships. Human ships. Yet describing them simply as ships was akin to terming a supernova merely a display of lights. "By the 7 moons!" Lieutenant Blas breathed, her violet complexion fading to a sickly pale lavender. Those dimensions cannot possibly be accurate. But they were. The foremost vessel, a behemoth that flouted standard starship design principles, spanned almost 5 kilometers from its prow to its stern. Its hull lacked the streamlined, aesthetically refined contours preferred by the majority of civilized races. Instead, this colossus appeared as if constructed by merging several asteroid excavation platforms, attaching an excessive amount of weaponry, and then, seemingly as a secondary consideration, incorporating massive engines that emitted an ominous crimson luminescence. "The HSS Harbinger," Ambassador Krell murmured, incapable of looking away from the display. "Flagship of the Reaper fleet. I've viewed classified schematics, but they fail. They utterly fail to convey its sheer preposterousness." Trailing the Harbinger were no fewer than 24 additional craft, each distinct in its monstrous configuration, yet united by their shared disregard for conventional spatial aesthetics or principles of physics. Some were elongated and sharp-edged, covered with what seemed to be hundreds of weapon emplacements. Others were rounded and ponderous, their hulls bearing scars that strongly resembled the impacts of smaller vessels which had collided with them and been destroyed. "Are those genuine skeletons depicted on the hull?" Commander Naren queried, narrowing his eyes at one especially menacing destroyer. "Technically, they are stylized representations of calcium structures, symbolizing their concept of the Grim Reaper," Krell corrected reflexively. "The humans possess this peculiar cultural obsession with representing death as a cloaked skeleton. And yes, they emblazon it on their warships, because naturally, they would." Admiral Vox leaned in, his seasoned eyes constricting. "Observe their arrangement. They aren't merely showing up. They are arranging for combat." As if validating his assessment, the human armada started to disperse with unexpected agility, establishing a 3-dimensional configuration that contrived to appear simultaneously disorganized and impeccably structured. "Incoming message!" Plick exclaimed, almost tumbling from his seat. "Audio and visual originating from the Harbinger." "Display it," Naren commanded, adjusting his uniform in a vain effort to appear respectable. The viewscreen transitioned to reveal a human bridge environment that resembled a hybrid of a cathedral and an industrial mishap. Positioned centrally was a human female, her dark complexion starkly contrasting with a white uniform, heavily decorated with so many metals it seemed improbable she could remain upright. Her hair was secured in tight braids, exposing a face that might be deemed appealing by human criteria, but was presently fixed in an expression that caused everyone in the command center to feel an instinctive urge to conceal themselves. "This is Admiral Morgan Walsh of the Earth Reaper Fleet," she declared, her voice unexpectedly resonant for someone commanding a vessel likely capable of fracturing a planet. "We intercepted your distress transmission. Apologies for the delay. We paused to acquire some party supplies." The camera shifted to reveal what looked like several dozen missiles, each the size of a modest structure. "The Droxians and I have some unresolved matters." Krell fainted completely, collapsing to the floor with a thud that went unnoticed. The last resort, contacting Earth. "Sacred cosmic particles," Lieutenant Blas exhaled. They actually showed up. First contact between aliens and human commander Morgan Walsh. Nobody made a move to assist Ambassador Krell as he remained sprawled upon the floor. All were utterly captivated by the human visible on the screen, this Admiral Morgan Walsh, who somehow appeared simultaneously impeccably presented, and as though she had just concluded a bout of wrestling with a star bear. "Well?" Admiral Walsh inquired, one eyebrow arching perilously high. "Is anyone present going to respond, or should I conclude this is a hoax call and direct my fleet elsewhere? I understand the Andromedans are engaged in a civil conflict. That might prove entertaining." "What?" Commander Naren hurried forward, nearly stumbling over Krell's inert figure. "Admiral Walsh, The Vidian Alliance expresses its gratitude for your unforeseen appearance. I am Commander Naren of the Vidian Defense Force, or what remains of it." Walsh's eyes narrowed, and she moved nearer to her display. You all appear dreadful. How long has your planet been under Droxian bombardment? 17 standard cycles, Admiral Vox replied, advancing with the composure of someone who had witnessed too much to be daunted, even by a human. They commenced with our peripheral colonies, then advanced inward. This represents our final stronghold. Walsh gave a nod, then pivoted to issue commands to someone off-camera. Tactical, provide a comprehensive scan of Droxian positions. Medical, ready deployment teams with relief provisions. And someone awaken Captain Chen. Inform him he has the opportunity to evaluate those new bunker-penetrating missiles he's been anticipating so eagerly. She returned her attention to the screen, her demeanor softened yet still alarmingly capable. The reinforcements have arrived, Commander Naren. Now, I require your tactical intelligence, access to your defense network, whatever is left, and someone capable of identifying the largest, most formidable Droxian warship currently in this sector. Lieutenant. Blaz tentatively lifted her hand. That would likely be the dreadnought Eclipse, 30 kilometers in length, outfitted with planet-cracking energy beams and shielded by energy fields that have deflected every attack we've launched. A gradual, predatory grin spread across Walsh's features, the sort of expression that likely preceded mass extinction events. Excellent. I've been seeking an opportunity to test our new quantum torpedoes. Their cost was so exorbitant that our Congress nearly experienced a collective vascular rupture, approving the expenditure. From the floor, Ambassador Krell groaned and pushed himself upright, looking confused. Did I miss anything? Please inform me I dreamt the human's arrival. Ah, good. The diplomat is conscious, Walsh noted, her smile becoming distinctly predatory. I believe we haven't had a formal introduction. Ambassador Krell, he mumbled, getting to his feet with as much poise as he could gather. Lorik Krell, Senior Ambassador of the Vidian Alliance. Enchanted, Walsh responded, in a manner suggesting the opposite. Inform me, arrival of the human fleet Ambassador Krell. What precisely did your diplomatic representative state when the Droxians issued their surrender ultimatum? Krell cleared his throat uneasily. We endeavor to arrange favorable conditions for planetary occupation, aiming for minimal civilian harm. Walsh's laughter was sharp enough to slice through diamond. And how did that strategy succeed? They replied by shelling our 3 most populous urban centers, Krell conceded, his scales flushing a deep shade of orange in humiliation. Naturally they did, Walsh sighed, shaking her head. You attempted to engage the Droxians with logic. That's quite charming. Akin to attempting negotiations with a singularity. A massive detonation abruptly shook the command center, causing everyone to lurch for stability. Alarms sounded as emergency lighting washed the room in pulsing crimson. Direct impact on level 3, someone yelled. They've penetrated the eastern defenses. Walsh's expression grew stern. It appears the window for diplomacy has closed. Commander Naren, ready your personnel for evacuation. We are descending. Descending? Naren echoed faintly. You intend to dispatch shuttles? The Admiral's grin was utterly terrifying. Shuttles are for sightseers. We favor a more straightforward method. The devastating battle against the Droxian Empire. The command center's view screen divided into several panels, displaying diverse perspectives of the planet's surface and its orbit. The events that followed would subsequently be chronicled by Ambassador Krell in his widely praised autobiography, Asterisk, How I Endured the Humans. Asterisk as exquisite destruction, if such a paradoxical concept could be realized. From the underbellies of the colossal human ships, smaller craft started to deploy, not in structured, orderly formations as Vidian military doctrine would require, but in a tumultuous swarm that nonetheless preserved flawless tactical coordination. Some were streamlined interceptors moving with incredible velocity. Others were heavily built troop transports covered in weapons seemingly capable of breaching a minor moon. What are those? Lieutenant Blaz inquired, indicating several cylindrical objects hurtling directly towards the planet's surface. Admiral Vox's eyes grew wide. Orbital drop pods. They are employing orbital drop pods. That's madness, Krell sputtered. No advanced species utilizes drop pods any longer. The casualty rate is acceptable, came Admiral Walsh's voice through the communication channel. She was presumably off-screen, likely too occupied preparing to launch herself planetward at lethal speed. We observe that a 30% survival statistic effectively motivates everyone. 30%? Naren repeated weakly. Walsh's laugh crackled over the speakers. Merely joking. It's closer to 98% currently. The remaining 2%, well, they receive exceptionally grand funerals. Before anyone could react to this unsettling attempt at levity, the initial wave of human vessels clashed with the Droxian fleet. It wasn't simply a conflict. It was chaos managed with terrifying accuracy. The Droxian warships, which had previously seemed so menacing as they methodically leveled Vidian cities, now appeared cumbersome and obsolete against the human craft that maneuvered around them. Human interceptors zipped between Droxian energy discharges with what looked like nonchalant indifference to physical laws. Larger human cruisers withstood impacts that ought to have disintegrated them, their peculiar patchwork hulls glowing momentarily before retaliating with armaments that created reality-bending distortions in their vicinity. Are those black hole battle against overwhelming odds generators? Commander Naren whispered, observing as a Droxian destroyer was compacted into a volume roughly equivalent to a serving platter. Micro-singularity projectors, corrected a human voice distinct from Walsh's. Seconds later, a new visage materialized on a secondary display, a human male sporting facial hair arranged in seemingly intentional configurations on his chin and upper lip. Captain Rick Chen, HSS Valkyrie. The singularities persist for only about 3 seconds, but that is 2 seconds more than required to spoil a Droxian's day. Meanwhile, in orbit above their principal city, the Droxian flagship, the feared dreadnought Eclipse, was maneuvering to target the human ships with its planet cracker beam. Its immense energy weapon started to emit an ominous green glow, building power for a blast capable of vaporizing landmasses. "Oh no," Krell lamented. "They're energizing the primary weapon." No one within the Vidian command center appeared overly troubled by this turn of events. Indeed, Captain Chen was smiling so broadly it seemed his face might tear. "They've fallen for the lure," he announced brightly. "Admiral Walsh, they are precisely where you intended." From another region of space, previously concealed behind Vidian's larger moon, the HSS Harbinger abruptly materialized, having somehow navigated a 5-kilometer battleship with the quietness of an apparition. "Unleash the Kraken," came Walsh's composed directive. A solitary projectile, if something the dimension of a small office structure could be termed a projectile, launched from the Harbinger's forward section. It advanced with deceptive leisure toward the Droxian flagship, leaving behind trails of blue-white energy resembling tentacles. "What is that device?" Naren asked, unable to avert his eyes from the display. Captain Chen's smile somehow broadened further. "We refer to it as the Kraken. Essentially, it's a quantum-entangled multi-phase torpedo containing a compressed dark matter core. Or, as our engineers prefer to describe it, a very substantial detonation within a very confined space. The torpedo impacted the Droxian flagship just as its planet cracker beam achieved maximum intensity. For a single, suspended moment, nothing occurred. Then, resembling a star's formation in reverse, the immense Droxian vessel imploded, collapsing inward upon itself with impossible geometric contortions, before violently erupting outward in a dazzling burst that briefly surpassed the brightness of Vidian's sun. "Perfect hit," Chen noted casually, as though they hadn't just observed the annihilation of what was formerly regarded as the Quadrant's most potent warship. Victory celebration and new understanding of humans. The Vidian capital city's main square, or its remnants, throbbed with activity as twilight fell on what would come to be known as Liberation Day. Emergency aid posts staffed by both Vidian medical personnel and human combat medics attended to the injured. Enormous human dropships distributed essential goods with an efficiency that verged on miraculous. Meanwhile, overhead, human fighter craft maintained their patrols, occasionally illuminating the encroaching darkness with bursts of weapon fire as they pursued the final escaping Droxian ships. Commander Naren sat on a fragment of a fallen statue that, until the previous day, had symbolized the founding of the Vidian Alliance. His uniform was ripped and dirty, his left antenna bent at an unusual angle, yet he was alive, as were the majority of his people, courtesy of the humans. Drink? Admiral Walsh stood before him, offering a flask containing something with an aroma strong enough to dissolve paint. Her white uniform, remarkably, remained spotless, even though Naren had personally seen her engage and subdue a Droxian commander twice her size during the ground combat. "I'm uncertain if it's suitable for your physiology," she added, observing his reluctance. "But should it prove fatal, at least you'll perish celebrating, rather than being atomized by those Droxian fiends." Naren astonished himself by chuckling, genuinely chuckling, as he took the flask. "Your solicitude for my welfare is deeply moving, Admiral." He ventured a small taste and instantly regretted it, as liquid heat seared a path down his triple digestive system. "By the void, what is this concoction?" "Tennessee whiskey. Distilled it myself on my family's estate between tours of duty." Walsh settled beside him with an informality no Vidian admiral would ever exhibit. "Potent stuff, isn't it?" "If by potent you imply weaponized," Naren gasped, taking another sip against his better judgment. Across the plaza, Ambassador Krell was deeply involved in an energetic discussion with Captain Chen and several other human officers. To universal amazement, the formerly apprehensive diplomat was now gesturing widely, his scales colored with the brilliant blue hue of enthusiasm. "Your ambassador appears to have overcome his apprehension towards us," Walsh noted, tracking Naren's line of sight. "Krell adjusts rapidly. It's part of what makes him an effective diplomat despite his eccentricities. Yesterday, he was certain you'd consume our offspring. Today, he's likely hammering out trade pacts." Walsh gave a short laugh. "We don't consume children. Too tough." When Naren's antennae instantly stood erect in alarm, she nudged him gently. "That's humor, Commander. Human humor." "Forgive me if I struggle to differentiate between human jests and human realities," Naren responded, relaxing somewhat. "After all, I just observed your troops cheering while launching themselves from orbit, enclosed in metallic caskets." "Drop pods?" Walsh amended. "And they are quite secure, mostly." Lieutenant Blas approached, appearing marginally less traumatized than she had in weeks. She rendered a formal Vidian salute to both commanders. "Commander Admiral, the initial casualty assessments are compiled. We sustained losses of roughly 12% of our surviving military personnel and under 5% of civilians in the zones directly involved in the fighting." "That's not possible," Naren breathed. "The Droxians surpassed us in numbers and firepower at every engagement." Walsh shrugged, reclaiming her flask for a substantial drink. "Advanced technology and the advantage of surprise have their limits. What truly counts is understanding your adversary's mindset. The Droxians depend on inducing fear and resorting to threats. They were unprepared for a foe who refused to yield." "You mean a foe irrational enough to deploy soldiers from orbit and utilize weapons that warp the fabric of reality?" Admiral Vox inquired, limping over to join them. His regulation uniform was replaced by simple medical bandaging, and one arm rested within a regenerative splint. Walsh grinned. "Precisely. At times, the most effective defense involves being so utterly erratic that your adversary pauses purely from bewilderment." From the other side of the square drifted the unmistakable sound of human laughter intermingled with the clicking chirps of Vidian mirth. A contingent of human soldiers had initiated what seemed to be an unplanned musical performance, utilizing damaged Droxian plating as makeshift drums, while others strummed peculiar stringed instruments. "They are celebrating," Naren noted with astonishment. "Hours post-battle amidst ruin, and they are creating music." "Aftermath and new alliances. That is humanity for you," Walsh stated, her tone softer than Naren had previously heard. "We battle like fiends, yet we embrace life with even greater fervor. My great-grandmother often remarked that humans live with such intensity because we are constantly cognizant of existence's fragility." Ambassador Krell had somehow been persuaded into the heart of the festivities and was trying to replicate a human dance step with his decidedly non-human physique. The outcome was so comically clumsy that both humans and Vidians burst into supportive laughter. I fail to grasp it, Admiral Vox conceded, observing the spectacle with confusion. Everything reported about humans depicted you as perilous, erratic warmongers. The diplomatic summaries characterized your species as belligerent expansionists, possessing troubling militaristic inclinations. Walsh chuckled, the sound unexpectedly pleasant. Oh, we are indeed perilous, make no mistake. We dedicated most of our history to internal conflict before mastering space exploration. However, that very history imparted something invaluable. And what might that be? Naren questioned. That nothing, no triumph, no tranquility, no instance of connection, should ever be considered guaranteed, she answered, lifting her flask in a salute. Therefore, we contend fiercely, we rejoice more fiercely, and we absolutely never forsake our allies. Allies? Lieutenant Blas repeated. Is that our current status? You issued a distress call, we responded, Walsh stated plainly. In human tradition, that establishes a connection, whether you desire it or not. The Vidian Alliance and Earth,